enjoyable.
After I read it, I went and read Stu Apte's, I think it's a Winds and Tide, because they cited it so many times in that book, but it wasn't near as good as Monty Burke's book, for sure.
He wrote another one called Sow Belly, and you might enjoy that. It's not about fly fishing, but about the pursuit of the world record bass, and it's a great book too. You enjoy reading it also.
I'll check it out. I like his articles. He's a good writer. He writes a lot for Drake magazine, and I've always enjoyed his articles. I thought that book was fantastic, though. I didn't realize how competitive these guys in the industry were, and how much they hated Lefty Cray, some of them. Because he apparently gave out the secret on what's Homosassa, Florida.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that's what my dad always told me. He says, look, I don't know many old fishermen that ever share their spots. You don't talk, And now in the advent of social media, everybody wants to chest thump and, oh, look at what I caught. Look, here's what I caught. No, don't. There's only so many good fishing spots. You got to be quiet about those things,
I remember one day, I believe it was at Beaver's Bend, with all of us in our group. This has been several years ago. We're catching a bunch of fish they had just released, and we were walking out, and my friend Rich Hudson there on the bottom of my screen was telling a husband and wife about how to catch them, what to catch them on, and where to stand and everything. And Carlton looked at him and told him to get in the truck. I thought he was going to beat him with the fly rod.
They had just released fish. That's why we were catching them. The rest of the story, Gene.
Okay, Gene, it is, you are live streaming on YouTube, and host is back to you. So.
Okay, so we're ready to go?
Indeed.
All right, great. So we're doing back to basics today. We're going to do a woolly bugger. This woolly bugger is patterned after the one that Tim Flager Tight Line video on YouTube. Some of you may be familiar with, Todd. It's done without wire, which is kind of a derogation from the traditional way to tie them. But with some cross wraps that we do with the thread, it ends up being a little bit simpler tie, quicker, and just as effective. So we're using, I believe it's a size 8, 3X long streamer hook, and a 3/32 bead. I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and spotlight. The time screen there so we can all see that. So here's the hook. Jim Johnson, I believe, was good enough to round these up for us in an emergency. It's a 3X long streamer hook, which is going to give us a little bit more shank to play with to get the materials on. And with that, we're matching, I believe it's a 3/32 gold bead. I think these are tungsten. They feel heavy enough. And so the first thing we're going to do, of course, is get the bead on. Small hole first, and get that secured in your tying vise. Now, woolly buggers, at least the way I fish them, are meant to be stripped and worked as a streamer. You can strip it, then kill it, let it die and back. So because of that, they, as opposed to a nymph where you don't want too much weight, where you get hung up on the bottom, rarely are you going to get this fly hung up on the bottom. So you still want it in the lower depth of the water column to get to where the fish are at. So because of that, even though we do have on this tungsten bead, we're going to add some lead wire or lead-free wire. I think this is, let's see. I think this is 0.02, which is about right. 0.03 is too big. To me, 0.15 is too small. But what we're doing with this lead wire, in addition to weighting the flies, also trying to secure our bead from slipping back on the shank. So if you want to go ahead and get 10 or 12 good wraps on the shank. And then if it's the good lead wire stuff, you can just pinch it off. If it's lead-free wire, you're probably gonna have to use your nippers. But then go ahead and move all of those wraps directly behind the bead. You can pinch off the remaining lead. And now you've got weight and your bead secured right behind the hook eye. Now I'm using 3/0 uni thread, which is, I think it's probably equivalent of 140 denier. I've got it in olive because we're tying an olive woolly bugger. Of course, you can use black, or if you want to use a neon color and have a hot spot, that's fine too. The important thing for me is that you build up a thread dam on this fly. That way, if any of you that played around with lead, you know that it'll want to slip just like the bead down the hook shank. So what we want to do is start our thread right in behind the lead wire. And cut your tag. And then we want to build up a little wedge there between where the thread is and where it runs into the lead wire. So the way I do that is just kind of build it up right in there behind it to get it about even. And then take overlapping, spaced out thread wraps over the wire, back at an angle towards the bead, angle back towards the bend, and then a few more wraps right in there behind the lead to kind of set it. That to keep it from moving. You can also add super glue if you want, which is good. But that right there is pretty sturdy, and I don't usually have any problems with them messing up from there. So after that, make touching wraps back down the shank of the hook to about the point. And we're going to get ready to tie in our marabou now. So take your marabou. We've got some olive marabou here. One thing on this fly, at least for the little Missouri and for my liking, I like kind of this more brownish yellow color. I think this is Sculpin olive, which is my favorite olive color type marabou. I don't know if there's any real difference, but I seem to have a little bit better luck than using like this more traditional olive color. This is UV2, which to me, you can't really tell with the light that I have in here, but it almost has a little bit of a chartreuse color to it as opposed to this more subtle, kind of earthy looking Sculpin marabou. So on the marabou here, we're going to want a tail that's about the same length of the whole shank of our hook. As you can see, this marabou that we have is got a pretty thick stem in there. Of course, we don't want that stem to be any part of our fly. We're going to use that very last part of it. And the best way to kind of gauge that, if you can wet the tail and kind of make it more manageable. And then measure out about a hook shank length. You can go a little bit longer if you want. I do not like to go too short. A lot of people like short tails. They'll tell you that a lot of fish will short strike, and that the shorter the tail, the better chance there is that the fish is going to bite and get some of that hook if they're nipping at a smaller tail. I don't like that though, because I feel like the shorter the tail, the less the movement. And part of what I think success on a woolly bugger is that it has a lot of moving parts when you're not stripping it, whenever it's just sitting stationary in the water and letting the water move it and make it look lifelike. So that being said, I like a little bit longer tail, usually about the whole length of the shank again. So you get that. You can certainly cut it off here if you want to, or you can just go ahead, pinch that to about the size you want and tie it in right there where you stopped your thread. once you have that, you can trim in and cut it. If you get a particularly bushy marabou tail, one thing, a little trick to do is just kind of spin it tight. It'll cord like that, where you can really get in there close and cut it off at the base. Then go ahead and cover up those little extra feathers that you got there. Now, at this point, what a lot of people will do, in fact, I would say the majority of woolly buggers will incorporate some flash, usually like some mid-sized chartreuse or other color like that. I honestly, and I don't fish as much as some of you guys, but I have never really noticed a difference side by side between whether or not there's flash or not on my woolly buggers. You know, having fished one with it, then another one where I just forgot to put it on, I've never really been able to tell the difference. Normally, whenever I tie these flies, I'm trying to tie as many as I can in a short amount of time. So I usually skip the flash. So on the chenille, we've got, I think this is probably medium-sized chenille. You definitely don't want it too large. If it's too large, it's too bulky. If it's too bulky, then once you get these other materials on your hook, it's going to want to, those materials, and y'all probably had this before, when you have really thick chenille on a small shank hook, that chenille will want to actually rotate on you, and it's really frustrating. So here we're just going to have this medium-sized chenille. This is olive, but it's variegated with some brown and stuff in there, which I like, because if you look at an actual sculpin, which a lot of the rivers that we fish, that's one of the primary food sources, they've got some brown and black and some yellowish kind of spots, depending on the time of the year, where it's kind of a variation in colors. I don't think it necessarily makes a difference, but I like to think that it does. So that's the color that I choose. So on this, we've stripped out some of the fibers where we just kind of got the cord there in the middle. I don't tie it all the way up to the front, because whenever we're going to make our hackle wraps later on, I don't want to crowd that bead. Plus, we've already, to back here about the 1/3 point, have lead wrapped on. So I don't want to make that any bulkier than it has to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it in right about at that wedge that we made. So it's kind of a smooth taper going up to the lead. And you want to tie that down, tie it back right into where you tied in your marabou tail. Once we do that, you can move your tying thread up to right behind the eye. And then we're just going to palmer that chenille going forward. If you have a rotary device on your or you have a rotary on your tying vise, you can use that for sure. Otherwise, it's pretty easy just to tie it up there to right behind the eye. After that, I'll just move my tying thread behind that chenille, pull it a little tight to secure it, couple wraps behind the bead, and we're ready to trim that off. Now we could stop right there and have a catch Cormier fluff butt, but we're going to do one more step and make this a woolly bugger. So we've got a couple of different types of feathers here. We have grizzly hackle, which you've seen in your materials. This is a traditional type of feather that's used for woolly bugger. They make them in packs. They're pretty cool because they've got the contrasting colors. They look real good in the water. We also have some saddle hackle here, which this looks like Chinese, but you can kind of tell where it's kind of sparse here on the outside. The one thing that I like to do with my woolly buggers, which is not tremendously different than most people, but it's the same kind of concept that I have with the Marabou tail. And that is that I want, whenever I'm stripping this fly and I kill it, I stop stripping and I want it to sit just a second. Say you're fishing, you're trying to get into a spot behind a log. You want to, get in front of that sockeye that's down deep in that one spot, or you're going behind a rock in a river somewhere and you want to strip, and then kill it and let it float and flutter and be enticing for just a second. I want that fly to keep moving even when I'm not moving it. So to do that, I like my hackles, just like on my tail, on my woolly bugger, to be kind of long. It doesn't look quite as good, sitting on your time vise, but to
Lost him.
Locked up. Let's see.
Jane, can you hear us?
Lost the audio.
That's the audio.
Planet,
The instructor.
whatever that is, that was in here.
You text him.
No audio.
Hmm?
No audio.
Just had audio.
No, he lost the
No.
audio.
This was planted in that salad.
What is it?
I don't know, but I'll find something.
What is it?
I don't know. Fish scale.
Can y'all hear me?
We
Now,
can now. You locked your iPad feed locked up.
Yeah, it says connecting on there. Can y'all see the screen with the fly?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, if I can just maybe go ahead and finish that part.
Yeah.
This is trying to connect. So we're talking about the hackle, and what I'm gonna do is I've got these two feathers here. You can tie them in tip first, or you can tie them in from back here in the webby base of it. That's usually best because towards the front of the fly, I want some of these longer fibers to be the ones that kind of form a collar. So I'll start with my grizzly. I'll go down here to a spot where I look like would be kind of a good length to start that collar, and go ahead and break that off or cut it off. And then peel back some of those fibers there at the beginning to give you a bare stem to tie in with. Then I want to take my saddle hackle and make it roughly the same length. And hold on, I'm trying to join in on the iPad.
Gene, it flipped host back over to me. So if you don't need to tie and log in on your iPad, that's fine.
Okay. So if I get these two feathers roughly about the same length, and I see where I trimmed off the base of my grizzly feather, and go ahead and do the same thing for my saddle hackle. And then pull some of those fibers down, doing the same way to make a bare stem where you can tie those in. Then I'll lay one on top of the other. Get those stems right on top of one another. You want the I guess that would be the concave. You want the feather as it bends normally down, facing away from you. Get those stems together, put them right in there behind the bead. Take a couple of wraps, pull up to secure them. Pull those stems back, and a couple more wraps in front of them before you go ahead and cut those off.
Hey, Gene, I
Yeah.
didn't see, which way were the stems facing forward across the top of the bead? When
Yeah,
you tied them in?
you want to put your stems not quite horizontal, but more of a diagonal range going from top towards bottom, towards southeast. So northwest to southeast, right in behind the bead, couple wraps over the top, and then you'll have just that little 1/4 inch of stem there. You can pull those back and tie in front of them and secure it off.
Got it. Thank you.
So then you're going to, and this is part of the reason that Tim Plager doesn't have to include wire in his woolly buggers. If you pull up those feathers out of the way, and then you take overlapping kind of loose wraps going back towards your marabou and stop right in there at the base of the tail. And once you've done that, you can come in, you can grab these, you can use Hackle pliers, those work good. Or you can just use your fingers like I'm going to demonstrate here. But I do like to go ahead, you can wet your fingers and preen these feathers down. So whenever you make those wraps, that you're not trapping any fibers or matting them together, that you're going to get some good flare here. Once you've done that, start in right behind the bead. You may need to continue to preen these feathers back a little bit. Get at least a full wrap in there behind the bead. Keep preening as you need to. And keep palmering your way back towards your marabou. You can do these with the same color feather. I don't think it matters. I kind of like the combination of the grizzly and the olive. I think also what looks pretty good is whenever you combine, believe it or not, olive with chartreuse feather, it just kind of gives it a little bit of a flashier undertone. But I do like this combination of olive and grizzly. Once you get your hackle back right to where the marabou comes in, you're going to go ahead and tie that feather off with a couple of wraps, maybe 3. What you don't want to do, I'll show you, you can reach in and cut that feather out. What you don't want to do is to crank too hard back here where your marabou meets your chenille, because if you do, you will mat down this marabou tail. If you go too far back, and then your marabou is going to want to hang down like this instead of being that big fluffy tail like that. So after you've done that, you can start cross wrapping. So this has the same effect that you would have with wire as you would tie on a regular woolly bugger. You're cross wrapping this to secure that hackle double over on your hook. And what you want to do though is take your time with this, go real slow, because if you come in and take a big turn like that, you're going to do like that, and you're going to mat your hackle down. So you have to work your way kind of in. You don't have to be perfect, but your tying thread will kind of work its way through there on its own if you take your time and kind of go slow and cross wrapping. Once you get to right behind the bead, and we're getting ready to finish this off, again, use a little moisture and pull these hackle feathers back towards the tail. As you do this and you tie in the front, that's going to allow those hackles to preen themselves backward to get that maximum movement. So we pull it back. Try not to trap any fibers. And get a good few wraps in there right behind the bead. And those are laying back about like you would want them to. Once you do that, you're ready to whip finish or half hitch, whatever you like to do. And then certainly if you want to, you can put in some head cement there, or some epoxy, whatever you like. This is about like I like it, the length as far as the hackle. And believe it or not, maybe even just a little bit longer. Again, I want it where whenever I pause it in the water, that these fibers and this tail are still moving on their own. So it's fluttering in the water instead of just being stationary. The shorter you get these fibers, some of those woolly buggers look real good, but if they're short like that, it's just like having, spiky hair gel. Your hair is not going to move no matter the wind or the water. So that's generally how Tim Flager ties his woolly buggers. That's how I like them. It's a little bit different, but very effective on just about any kind of fish that you want to do or you want to catch. And just about every different kind of size. You can go to a size 6 or 4 or a 2 if you're targeting bass. This is a great size for sockeye, and trout just absolutely love them, whether they look like a crawfish or a sculpin, or anything like that. It doesn't really seem to matter. It seems like almost every fish in North America will eat a woolly bugger.
Gene, is this the same tie you used on those that when we were up on Little Mo last month?
Honestly, I use either a neck hackle or a schlappen feather.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. I've got some here, I'm sure.
But it seems like I remember you had one where you had a collar, an extra collar behind, or no? Was it just combined like this around and palmered like the body?
Okay, so when I do schlappen, those fibers are really long, and sometimes they get a little longer than I like. So, here's some schlappen. As you can tell, I mean, these are really long fibers, and that makes for a really gnarly bugger, as you can tell. So if I feel like those are a little bit long, instead of taking a few full wraps right behind the bead, I'll start a little bit further behind. I'll let these longest fibers kind of go through here with schlappen, and I may come back in with either a neck hackle or a saddle hackle like we've done, or grizzly, and then just kind of make a little collar right behind it. That way I don't want it to look so unnatural with so many fibers right behind the bead, but I do want it because in the water it has a tendency to lay down and then flutter and stuff like that. So if I want to put a collar on, it just really depends on how it turns out. And I don't have the luxury of picking out my own feathers from a fly shop, so I just kind of make do with what I have. Some of the schlappen feathers are really thin and have short fibers, and other ones are huge and bulky. So I'll just kind of tailor it to whatever size I think is right, which is usually about like this.
Got it.
Hey, Gene.
Yes, sir.
This is Mike. When you initially tied the feathers in and you laid them along the shank, was the convex side down against the shank?
So I went to law school to avoid math and science and things like that. So convex and concave have always confused me. I can tell you this, can you still see me?
I can see the fly.
Hold on, my tripod fell over when I was trying to do this. So it bends the underneath side. Would that be the concave?
That'd be the convex side is down right now.
Okay. So what I do is in that curve right there,
I think the hell I don't know.
you turn it just like this. So the feather is bending away from you, and you're going to tie it in like that. If you tie it in the other way, what'll happen is whenever you start making these wraps, those feathers are going to want to point towards the eye of the hook. And that's backwards from what we're trying to get them to do.
Okay, I got you. So whoever interjected the concave versus convex was correct. I was wrong, but yeah, so the curved end, it's like the baseball glove part was over the top of the hook shank when we tied it in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just take it like that. Look,
Yeah.
that side, turn it that way again, because if you turn it this way, you can see already what's going to happen. Whenever you start making those wraps, they're going to want to force themselves that way, which is kind of death to good movement. And it just looks funny.
Yep. Okay. I did. Thank you. Good
Yes, sir.
instruction. Good instruction. So did you ever put another hackle up on front of the woolly buggers? It's a little mow.
The ones, can you hear me, Bill?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So again, I'm trying to describe how I do this. So if I go through and I tie on, if I get a feather and I feel like those fibers are really long, are really thick, say something like this schlappen feather, to not just overwhelm the front of that fly, then I'll do that for the body of it. And then I'll take a smaller hackle and make a collar behind it.
Okay.
Or like this one where I'll combine both of them. Sometimes if they're really small, I'll take two feathers and put them on top of each other, just like we did on this one. But then, I will twist them up and make a cord out of it like that to wrap. It's really, you can't really go wrong with this. I feel like for me personally, what I like are longer hackle fibers and a longer fluffy tail. And it's, again, I don't think there's a right or wrong thing, but for me, the movement is what I feel confident in. And Bill, I'm sorry about this iPad deal. I don't know. It just says that it's like a server or connection or some kind of issue, and it's not letting me back in.
No, it's fine. For some reason it bumped the host over to me, I guess because you'd done it before. So I've got everybody.
Did that mess up the live stream?
No, not at all. No, live stream's coming off your phone. Looks good. I have the live stream up on my other screen. Looks really good. All right. Do we want to take a look at some flies we tied? We're at 6:36. So let me see here, Gene. Hang on. All right, Flip has his up. Flip's up front. Yes. Now that is the grizzly mixed in, Flip? Oh, you muted, I think.
Yeah, the grizzly is mixed in with the olive.
Yeah, that's a really nice link. Cool.
It looks good.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Mr. Wood is next down there. I think he's next. Oh, no, Mike, I'm sorry. Mike's next. Sorry about that, Tyler. Just a second. Cool.
That looks good, Mike. You can really, so what I liked on yours, if like whenever you turn it with the B where it's facing the camera. So if you look at that and you can see that you have a pretty good and even spiral of those hackles going back. To me, I don't know if it makes a difference to a fish, but it just looks good. It looks right.
Gene, as long as it looks good to you, I'm happy.
Right.
All right, Kevin
Thank
Wood.
you.
Let's see. All right, Tyler, how are you?
Hey, Tyler.
Oh, good. Hey. All right, let's see.
Tyler did not get materials from me, so it's nice.
Yeah, my spacing wasn't good, so I just threw in some dubbing to cover up.
That'll hunt. That will hunt.
It's good. Good color too.
Yeah, black and purple. We'll try that out this weekend.
Jim Johnson's going to be all purple with us in a couple of weeks. So this will be into purple. All right, Mr. Hudson. Yes, gotcha. Yes. Yeah. Looks good, Rich.
Well, the Marabou, I could have done better with the Marabou. I should have put another strand on it. It's kind of wimpy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
some of them, you know how it is with a pack of Marabou. It's some are thin, some are thick,
Yeah.
some are wispy. But that's with that long hackle in the front, it'll push water and move.
Mhm. It's fun.
Hey, Mark, I got you up. I see yours up there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's good, Mark.
That's a nice tie, Gene.
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, it's and like Gene, like you said, it looks different than typical, tight wrap hackle, tight hackle Marabou. That's like size to the hook kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I see you at your desk. Ketchman's not going to hear me. Let's see. Jim, did you tie?
No, I was soaking up all that knowledge.
Let's see. Tom, what about you? All right, hang on, Tom, just a second. All right, raise it up just a little bit for us. Oh, yeah, nice.
My tail's a little shorter than I'd like it. This is a great fly, though.
Well, I watched Gene just like kill the trout on the little mow with it. And I said, well, yeah, we got it. And I looked at his woolly bugger and I said, yeah, it looks a little different than mine. Like it has a collar and a longer hackle and collar. We need to look at that. It was very, very effective. Might have had something to do with the guy on the rod. I don't know, but the flies were working pretty well too. Let's see. Did I get everyone? Tyler, I got you, Rich. Catch, did you tie tonight?
No, I didn't. I was
After
just absorbing knowledge, like Jim said.
After that big win at the Bass tournament this past weekend? Congratulations, man. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Let's see. Mark, Gene, Flip. I think I've got everybody, Gene. Very nice.
Well, good. I know next session, Jim Johnson has something really special planned for us. I'm excited about.
9% of that fly is what you just did just then.
Yeah, it's good to because, and Tyler can tell you this, so many of like the articulated flies that for predator trout and big fish nowadays, most of the time, those trail hooks, those stinger hooks that they have are just a woolly bugger. And so, perfecting your buggers is really good because it builds on so many things, just like that fly that you're going to tie in I guess, a couple weeks or next week.
Yep, 2 weeks. Yep, 2
weeks.
I never tied a twister tail. Do you have one, Jim, you can show us? Hang on. Let me spotlight you. Let's see.
You see it?
Yeah.
It's
Oh, that looks awesome.
yeah, it's we used them last week. I never got a strike on it. Of course, we didn't get a strike on anything last week. So
No, we didn't. No. But yeah, that's a cool bass fly. It should just fish. I mean, there's no doubt.
it will. And with the pattern that we're following, he doesn't put it in the front, but I tried it in my test pool out here, and when it would fall, the tail would do what it's supposed to, but it wouldn't. When it gets to the bottom, it just lay down. I thought maybe it didn't have enough weight, but if you keep jigging it, it goes fall back head first, and that's what's more important. going down really after it hits the bottom. Because 90% of fish that hit this stuff is on the fall after you pick it up. So I think it's gonna be a good fly. I see
Hey,
it.
Jim, the
Sir?
question is it legit?
Is Pete Cooper here?
I know what Pete would say.
I do. That's why I made that comment. Yeah, fly rod rules. Didn't say anything in there about any of that stuff. If you know something we don't pick, so is it legit?
Hey, Cass, why would it not be legit?
Got some soft plastic in it.
That's soft plastic in it.
Hey,
Yeah, Pete actually wrote in the state fly rod rules, regulations for fly rod records, not to have preformed plastic in.
You know,
Preformed plastic, preformed metal.
Bill and I looked
You
it
didn't
up.
want spinners and you didn't want plastic tails. He used to have a fit when he'd see Pete Bongiovanni from New Orleans tying these flies with these plastic tails on there. I don't know if any of y'all know Pete Bongiovanni. I remember him.
But Catch, I looked it up. I couldn't find it. I don't know if I missed it or what, but I looked it up the other day and I didn't find any specifics. So I guess I need to look it up again. But
well, what's the difference between a piece of plastic worm and a pork rind?
well, you don't use either of them on fishing on a state record for a fly rod record. That's what Catch is saying, that would be legit with this plastic tail on it. So
Yeah. Tom Nixon sure like to put those pork rind tails on too.
and spinner.
Yeah, I think synthetics and that type of stuff's the way of the future, though. It looks like a lot of stuff's going that way. So I don't know.
But you know what? The classic one of the classic fly patterns was the Pistol Pete. I mean, that's one of the first flies I had in my box. That's basically a wood bug with propeller on the front.
Yeah.
Hey, Catch, see this?
Yes.
Is
The
that
guy-
a fly?
I was in Lafayette. The guy tied it and gave it to me. And I don't remember who it was.
That's
Like
a
a
Tom
rooster
Nixon
tail.
spinner.
Yes,
That's a Tom Nixon spinner.
I can't. The guy was it tied it and gave it to him. It wasn't Tom Nixon because it was after he passed away.
I know, but it's his fly.
Yeah. I hadn't used it. I know it'll catch fish.
That's what those guys with the spinner rods are throwing out there and hauling them in. So
That's a big mip. So, but anyway, we're gonna tie this one with a plastic tail. Okay. If they also tail like this, I think Pat Cohen's got it or somebody else, and it's a suede tail. So I mean, you know, there's other twister tails. Plus, go to Academy and buy a pack of lizards and tail off of them. They're kind of, but that thing's a little thicker, but it'll fish.
that it will. All right, Jim, we look forward to it. 2 weeks from tonight. That's the what? 18th, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, 18th May.
Yeah. 18th. 18th.
Hey, Kat, you still on?
Yes.
I got somebody who's interested in going to the Fly Fishing 101 on the 22nd of May.
Yes.
Is there